I am the evil monster. I will destroy you.
Good morning, Bob here again. More adventures of Mind Flotsam. I was talking to a friend of mine today, and he informed me he had never heard of the word flotsam before. You know, I guess that makes sense. It's not the most common word. It's not like you hear it every day. Ah, yes, a flotsam. Just what I always wanted. Please help me, my flotsam's on fire. Sorry, man, I'm gonna run you about $600. You're gonna need new flotsam, because your old flotsam all wore out. It's slicker than the baby's greasy bottom. Full flotsam, you don't know what you're talking about. Next, add 2 jiggers of white wine, a tennis shoe, 1 peeled and chopped flotsam, and saute till your hair catches fire. Put up your flotsams, this is a holdup. Could you hand me the baby powder? This itchy flotsam is driving me nuts. Do you guys have any more of that mint flavored dental flotsam? I will not eat them in a box. I will not eat them with bagels and lox. I will not eat green eggs and spam. I will not eat them, flotsam I am. So it's not a common word. I often hear it used together with jetsam, so you hear flotsam and jetsam. Basically what flotsam and jetsam are, we call them the leftovers from a sinking ship. As that ship is sinking, in order to make it lighter, the crew may throw things off to lighten the load. That's called jetsam because it's been jettisoned from the craft before it sinks. Then after it sinks and there's wreckage and stuff floating around, laying on the surface of the water, that is the flotsam. And that's kind of the idea behind a series of videos. I just blab into the camera like a shipwreck. You know, you can kind of think of me as a shipwreck that won't shut up. After my verbal ship is done sinking, what's left behind? Linguistic flotsam from my mind. So that's why I call it mind flotsam. I just blab incessantly into the camcorder like a lunatic, and then 89% of the things I say are totally unusable because what else would you expect when you turn a babbling lunatic loose in front of a camcorder? But then there's 10% that's usable. Kind of like that old metaphor. There's our Freudian thingy. Kind of like that metaphor of monkeys typing Shakespeare. You turn an infinite number of monkeys loose with an infinite number of typewriters, and one of them will eventually end up typing one of Shakespeare's plays. So that's kind of the derivation of the name Mind Flotsam. And actually those words were inspired by a title of a book that George Carlin wrote called Brain Droppings. And you can see the analogy. Brain and mind are related. They're both cerebral things, and flotsam and droppings, they're both waste products. Only mine came from a ship, whereas his came from the business end of a bird, metaphorically speaking. I need a segue. But enough about flotsam. Let's talk about me. I had a heart attack a couple of years ago. Actually, it's been 4 years now. How time flies when you're not dead. Started getting chest pains while I was doing my taxes. That's a true story. So we decided to go to emergency. My wife drove me. You know, and now that I think back of it, I could have just wiped out our entire, probably all of North America's medical system if things had gone badly. Because what happened is we walked in, and they took me right away. Because I found out, no matter how many people are in an emergency ward, there's 2 things that go right to the front of the line. One is chest pains, and the other is if you have a sharp object protruding from your eye. So I got right in there. Lady hooked me up to an EKG, took one look at it, and she got this look of horror and shock on her face. She said, "I gotta go get someone." And she jumped up and ran away. Now, as I think back on it, I'm thinking, she looked so shocked. I was wondering, you know, what if I had given her a heart attack? They would have had to get someone else in there. I would have still been hooked up. They would have hooked her up. And then when that person looked at her EKG, that could have given them a heart attack. And eventually, it would have been like a nuclear explosion. Whereas more and more people came and saw our EKGs, they would be in such shock, they would have heart attacks. It'd be like that scene in the movie Stand By Me. Remember where that first kid threw up, and then that made the kid next to him sick by looking at it and hearing it, and then he threw up, which, you know, then 2 other people next to them threw up, and pretty much the whole room was throwing up all over the place? It'd be like that, only with heart attacks. Well, that was kind of a gastrointestinal holocaust. I guess it'd be a myocardial infarction-o-caust. They would have kept sending in more and more medical personnel from area hospitals, and eventually they had been flying them in from other states, and pretty soon we would have wiped out the whole American medical system. And then we'd have to get people from Canada. Pretty soon all of North America would be pretty much wiped out in terms of medical emergency room help. And I think that thing could go on forever, wiping out help from all over the world, you know, until the English got involved, because they're pretty stoic people. Let's see, what have we got here? Looks a bit grim. What's for lunch? I hope it's bangers and mash and shepherd's pie and some crumpets. No, crumpets. Till next time, please keep all hands and feet inside the ride till it comes to a complete stop. Cheerio, pip pip.